have negative here, positive here. Potassium kind of gets attracted, repelled, attracted, repelled, attracted, repelled, attracted, repelled. Make sense? So it just kind of moves back and forth. That's helping this muscle's membrane, the cell, have an electrical charge. How do I know that muscle has an electrical charge? How do we know? Can we run a test on it? What kind of test can we run on muscle to check the electricity of it? Myogram? They stick the little things on you, okay? You can either make the muscle flex or something else could, and they're going to test the strength of the contraction. So we know it has electricity. Something has to now occur for contraction to take place. We have to have these charges flip-flop. Any idea what I mean by that? Jill?
I'm thinking it's going back to that original drawing you did at the beginning when the gates open and the ions flow in, and then other gates open and they flow out, and it maintains the thing, the charge, or creates the charge.
I gotta turn inside positive, but we gotta make sure it gets back to negative. So I gotta have it flip-flop all the way down that entire muscle cell. If I can do that, that means the muscle will contract. Am I beating a dead horse yet? Thank you, Tiffany. So, we are dependent upon
The sodium, potassium.
I feel like Vanna. I'm dependent upon ligand gated, voltage gated, sodium, potassium. Now am I ringing any bells? What bells am I ringing?
Can you say what you're dependent on again? The ligand gated.
Ligand gated from the neurotransmitter is the ligand that opens the ligand gated one.
Ligand gated is from my neurotransmitter.
Yeah, so that's going to bring in the charge, which will change the charge on the inside, which will open the voltage gated.
Which is going to open my voltage gated.
And then eventually it's going to go back and forth, ligand the voltage, ligand the voltage, and then the sodium potassium is going to sit at normal.
And sodium potassium is going to bring it back into its norm. Aren't y'all glad I did that huge, great big drawing?
The sodium, potassium, and then pump.
The sodium potassium pump. Yes, 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 yes.
If I could upload it, that video, and when you did that.
It should be on the channel. So my leak channels. The potassium, because they're mostly, that's the one that they're most, permeable to, is the potassium. So potassium will just sort of go bing, boom, bing, boom, bing, boom. Okay? And once we get a signal from the nerve, okay, that's going to affect ligand gated. If ligand gated open, what rushes in? Huh? What?
Potassium.
Sodium. Okay? Then, if my ligand gated get affected, it'll then affect voltage gated. And if voltage gated open, what rushes in? Sodium. And so now I'm dependent on my sodium potassium pump to bring it all back to normal. Yes, no, maybe. If you remember, sodium potassium pump, okay, 3-to-2 ratio. Trying to get everything back in balance. So our channels, we're going to be dependent on those ligand gated, voltage gated, and then we're going to be dependent on the sodium potassium to bring it back into balance. Now, what does the balance mean? Okay? What does that look like? An axis, right? We know up here, positive, down here, negative, correct? When we talk about muscle having the ability to be electric, think about voltage. That's how we measure electricity, correct? Like the electricity running through the wall right there is on voltage, okay? We start our car. The battery runs on voltage. For example, 12 volts, okay? In the muscle, because it is electrical, it has voltage. But we can't have a full volt. Have you ever gotten shocked by a car battery? Okay, now, it's fun, all right? Because, you know, you kind of are like, you know, my age, and, you know, the fact that single, okay? So, we think we can do all things, all right? Well, I did, okay? Put the little things on and jumped my friend's car when the battery died. Everything went great, negative to negative, positive to positive. You know, got that all figured out. The one thing I wasn't told about these lovely, lovely little, what's the things that hook to it? The jumper cables, okay? That when you take them off, make sure you don't let them touch if they're still connected to the car that's running. So, what happened? They touched. I bet I jumped 10 feet in the air. Sparks flew everywhere, okay? It was hilarious. We could have had a real funny YouTube video. So now, we can't really have that kind of voltage running through us. Needless to say, I think it would be a tad bit painful. So we're based on millivolts, a millionth of a volt, okay? Now let's stop for a second and think about what can happen with the volts. When we have our muscle cell at rest, is the inside of this membrane more negative or positive? It is more negative. So, if that's the case, somewhere down here, about negative 85, okay? That's my muscle cell at rest. Is everybody following me? When the action potential is received and we begin to see an influx of the sodium, sodium is positive. That's going to make that charge, that muscle, start to do this number. Because I'm making the inside of this membrane more positive. Is that correct? So to make it more positive, I've got to move in the positive direction, right? So if I get that influx of those positive ions, the sodiums, there's an area called threshold, okay? Usually about negative 35, negative 30 to 35. If I can push my membrane from this to this, no matter what happens at this point, there's going to be a muscle contraction. What'll happen is it'll do this number and then it'll come back down. Why does it do that?
Is it to release the charge?
Okay, we understand what I said about why at rest, okay, because this is at rest, why it's negative 85, right? Because it's very negative on the inside of this plasma membrane. But if I get that action potential, all of my positives begin to flow in, right? And that pushes my membrane to the more positive side. Is everybody following me now? All right? Now, that means if I made this membrane reach the area of threshold, that entire muscle fiber, that entire muscle cell is going to now contract. So that means all these positives come in. Do you see now how I got to be very positive? Okay? Once the muscle has contracted, it's going to start pushing the positives out, and it's going to start becoming more negative. So I now begin to move more towards my negative. Is everybody following me on the chart here? All right? To the point that I'll reach the resting potential again.
So when it's repolarizing, that's corresponding to the sodium potassium pump.
Yes.
Okay.
We are looking at what is happening between the positives and the negatives.
Okay.
So, when I get the action potential and I go from negative to more positive, I depolarize. Once the muscle contracts and my sodium potassium pumps are now functioning, I take it back to being more negative and I repolarize. Yes, no, maybe. So